How do I get started making games is probably the question I'm asked the most. In this video, I'll be running through how I started making games myself around 2008, from terrible creations in Adobe Flash to Lumbermill, my commercial indie management game in Unity 2D. For those new here, my name's Ben and I'm a full-time solo indie game developer. It's taken me a little while to get here though, and I've tried and failed a lot along the way. So let's go back to around 2005. I was an 8-year-old kid, and I was making the most of my PlayStation 2. I played through Ratchet & Clank countless times, and on my parents' Windows XP PC, tried unsuccessfully over and over again to run a successful park in Roller Coaster Tycoon, or a hospital where the doctors actually knew what they were doing in Theme Hospital. I loved those management style games. Setting up a business and trying to make money weirdly appealed to my 8-year-old brain. Not long after that, some friends introduced me to a website called Albino Black Sheep. It was all about Flash animation. These crude but super entertaining creations were all I wanted to watch when I got home from school, and I eventually managed to convince my parents to get me a license for Adobe Flash CS3. Flash didn't have the terrible reputation it has today, and aside from that, I could finally make my own animations. Albino Black Sheep wouldn't accept my masterpieces though, so I ended up on Newgrounds. Anyone could submit their Flash creations to Newgrounds, where they were listed on the homepage to be watched, played, and rated by the community. This was awesome. You had a guaranteed audience, and there was always the chance you'd get a great score and get featured. My first animation that made it past public approval was The Ultimate Battle 2, an intense standoff between two tanks with music I'd stolen by shoving a microphone up to my tinny PC speakers. After the well-received, long-awaited sequel, Ultimate Battle 3 came out, I felt it was time for a change. Newgrounds had a huge focus on games and loads of tutorials to help beginners get started with ActionScript. Of course, I didn't have the patience to actually learn ActionScript, instead choosing to copy the code and create a sort of Frankenstein's monster. My first game, 4XX OPS, an operating system parody with a catchy title, where you essentially just clicked on stuff, was released as an early Christmas present to Newgrounds on the 21st of December 2008. It scored a grand total of 1.8 stars, narrowly making it onto the website for good. I really enjoyed making that game though, and even made 2 further entries in the OPS series, 5XX OPS and 6XX OPS. I'm not sure why I didn't just start counting at 1, but hey, if Xbox can do it, so can I. Undeterred by the bad reviews, I'd actually started to get a slight addiction to creating little games for people to play online. Trying to get better scores and reviews each time felt great, and the process itself was really exciting. I finally started to understand ActionScript through brute force when I made my first proper game, Jump. A basic little platformer where the main character looked like this when he jumped. Masquerading as Scorpia Studios, I was 13 at this point and feeling a bit more confident. Clearly a lover of sequels, I released Jump 2 half a year later, and it actually wasn't too bad. I hid a few secrets throughout the levels and was starting to get some confidence as a game designer. I was still stealing code unceremoniously from Newgrounds tutorials, but it gave me an appreciation for the design process. What's more, people at school loved the game, as websites like Miniclip and Newgrounds were banned on school computers. Jump 2 made the rounds via email, and people often played it in lessons, and often got caught by the teacher screen watching all the gamers at the front of the room. I ditched the Scorpia Studios username around 2013, confidently relaunching myself as Flux Games, ready to focus entirely on Flash game development. From 2013 to 14, I started a bunch of projects, one a culturally questionable platformer set in Japan called Low Sun, and a puzzle game called Unison, where you move 2 blocks in opposite directions. I was getting a bit more confident with programming now, and my designs were slowly but surely improving. I was struggling to finish games though. The only thing I released as Flux Games wasn't a game, but a tutorial about animations and buttons. That got a respectable 4.1 score on Newgrounds though, which felt great after the failures of previous years. After years of working in Flash, the technology was starting to age, and I felt like I needed a change. I tried a bunch of languages, bought books on Python, Java, and JavaScript, but eventually settled on Code Academy tutorials. I worked through the tutorials there to really get an understanding of how programming languages work and the basics of object-oriented code. I knew enough to get by and decided to study computer science as one of my final school subjects. My final project for that was a game in Unity, New World Mining Company. This was a pixel art mining game based on my favourite Flash game, MacLeod. As a miner on an alien planet, you were tasked with drilling down into the depths for minerals to eventually buy your ticket back home. You could upgrade your drill, find new rare minerals the deeper you went, and all of this was procedurally generated. I'm actually still pretty happy with how this game turned out, especially as it was my first proper C# Unity project. This time, everything was my own work. Art, music, code, and some voiceover sound provided by Alexa before she was famous.
Minerals have been received. Thank you, miner.
At that point, I knew computer science was what I wanted to do, so I went to the University of Sheffield to study. Ready for a new project, the first summer before university, I mind mapped for my next game. I settled on a lumberjack simulator. Something about a chilled out life in the woods appealed to me, and I started on the first iteration of what you now know as Lumbermill. 3D modelling was very much not my thing, and I couldn't get it performing well enough. I ditched it, carried on with my uni work, and eventually returned to the project a year later, this time as a 2D, 1-bit colour palette Java game. This time, the art style looked nice but was too limited, and the Java engine I was using too finicky. So I shelved Lumbermill again. I made a level builder for a game called Unison, an old Flash game I'd started making years before, where you control 2 blocks moving in opposite directions. It's quite a cool concept that I might return to eventually, but as usual, I lost interest in that project too. For those that have followed the channel for a while, you'll know that there was another attempt at Lumbermill, this time again in Unity, but 3D isometric. This is the furthest I'd gotten with the idea, and managed to implement some basic lumberjacks and storage buildings. Again though, the 3D modelling got the better of me, and I decided to shelve the project again. At this point, I'd spent a long time on this project, and each time I just didn't have a clear and decisive plan for how to make the thing, or the skills to pull off something as complex as what I was planning. I spent a year just focusing on my university work, and after all the failed attempts, I knew I'd learned enough to give the idea one last shot. I settled on a 2D isometric pixel art style, something I could make art for quickly, but still have enough space for detail. I set up a Trello board and planned out all of the game's main features. This time I was going to finish it or give up entirely. Watching devlogs on YouTube had given me a real burst in productivity, and I was ready for a new hobby project. I decided that before I start, I should make devlog videos to hold myself accountable. So I set up this YouTube channel and uploaded the first devlog. It was pretty bad, and I got a single comment and 16 views before I made it unlisted. I scripted a better video, gathered footage for it from the first few weeks of work on the new game, and released that in February 2019. I shared it on Reddit, and over time ended up with enough people watching and interested in the project to really keep me motivated. Since then, Lumbermill has shifted from hobby project to a full-blown commercial game, and somehow 30,000 people watch each devlog. Now I'm definitely accountable to finish this thing, and I'm loving the process. Along the way, I've made a bunch of other short games and certainly learned a lot since those first terrible attempts at Flash animation. It's definitely been a gradual journey from appreciating games as a kid to making Flash animations, basic games, then eventually graduating to Unity and finally to where I am now. There's still a lot to do, and I'm always learning new techniques and processes to make my games better. If you're not sure how or where to start making games, there are tons of good free tutorials on YouTube and elsewhere, and the best thing you can do is just download an engine, set yourself a small project, and figure things out as you go with the help of the internet. Before you leave, make sure to wishlist Lumbermill on Steam. Wishlists help me out hugely and will help the game get featured on release. You'll also get notified when the game comes out or goes on sale. The link is in the description. Patreon is the best way to support the channel though. You can check out the rewards at the link to Patreon in the description. Special thanks for this video go to my patrons, and in particular I'd like to thank Mike James, Pepper Trollman, Nova, Sheshpesh, Warner M14, BD Smith, Lego Nerd, Ojo Marin, Dominic, Hayden, Justin Atom, Gecko, Kleb, Mr. Smith, Chris Naismith, and HPR. That's all for this video. If you liked it, remember to subscribe, and I shall see you next time. Cheers for watching.